I have to be extra intentional about putting myself in spaces, forming relationships, and things of that nature where I don't feel like I have to advocate for myself in order for there to be peace here, right? In order for there to be harmony here. So I think I have advocacy fatigue. I've never heard it before, but I think that's what it is. I have an advocacy fatigue because it's annoying to feel like you always have to advocate for yourself. And I think the reason it's so annoying for me is because advocacy for me was a symptom of hyperindependence, hypervigilance, and lack and scarcity, right? And constantly being in spaces that were chaotic. And when you're in spaces that are chaotic, I come from a big family, right? Like 12 plus kids. And when you come from environments that have a lot of chaos, you have to advocate to get to your point across. You have to really advocate, to be heard. So when you grow up in environments that require that of you, you get used, like your personality becomes formed, like this is an expectation. And I got really good at it. Like in my family, they call me Tia Avoca in Creole. That means like little lawyer, right? Because I will defend my cause, I will state my case, that whole bit. However, just going through my transformation journey, going through my Esther year, all that, like that's something that I released, right? That hyper vigilance, that hyper independence. However, even though I released it or the energy and the place that came from, it did not eliminate all the scenarios in my life where advocacy is still important. And that's the weird balance of like healing, is that even though there were things that you were overextended in because of the personality or the mindset that you operated in before, even though you've gone through the process to lay that part of you to rest, right? Retire it. It doesn't change the fact that there may be some situations in life that require a version of that from you. But as I went through these different processes, that piece of me no longer wanted to operate that way. So when I surrendered everything, right? And I surrendered those wounds and allowed myself to heal, the hyper independence wasn't a priority anymore. The hyper vigilance was a priority anymore. I didn't want to operate in a scarcity mindset, which means the ways I had to function in order to survive in those environments, that survival mindset, I was releasing it. I was releasing that strength. So advocacy for me is a survival strength. Here's the thing, is that even though that this is a strength that was developed because of the environments I was in, it doesn't change the fact that there are still scenarios that pop up in my life where it might require me to advocate. And the thing about it is that that no longer rocks my boat. So when I advocate for myself in the past, it will feel like, oh, okay, you disrespected me or you thought you were going to get away with this, let me handle this, right? And then there's some reward or there's some satisfaction. You feel like you won. But because I don't get that feeling of satisfaction or that reward or that high from those kind of scenarios, it's like I just want peace. I want calm, right? But that's idealistic. Life is not perfect. So when scenarios pop up where there's advocacy, it's fatigue for me. It's exhausting because it brings me to a time where it makes me feel like, why do I always have to do this? Like, why do I always have to, you know, speak up? Or why do I always have to be the one to point this out? Like, why do I always have to be it? Like, right? Those are the thoughts now that go through my mind. However, I will say this, there's the best solution I have found for myself to alleviate this as much as possible is this. I have to be extra intentional about putting myself in spaces, forming relationships, and things of that nature where I don't feel like I have to advocate for myself in order for there to be peace here, right? In order for there to be harmony here. So the standards of the spaces that I go through and the relationships that I create are so important because I no longer have a desire to, state my cause as to why I was mistreated or why this wasn't handled properly or why this was overlooked and things of that nature. And when you decide that you don't, and this is so important, guys, especially for you guys that are in your Esther year journey, this is why it's so important to surrender your survival strength, because advocacy for me is a survival strength. So by surrendering advocacy, what that means is I no longer want to use this, right? Now, does that mean I'll never use it? No, of course, it's still a strength, but I no longer want to live. This is no longer the way that I push my life forward, because advocacy, it's a forced energy, right? I'm forcing things to align. But because I no longer want to use that forced energy that I'm a master of, what it now requires for me to do is be intentional about the spaces that I'm in, because now it elevates my standard to now choose spaces where that's not required of me. Because the way that the spaces are organized, the way that that thing is organized, the way that those people are set up, is they don't pull on that piece of me because the alignment is there, right? And when you are operating in survival strength and you are a master of survival strength, you can't see yourself operating without it. So for me, advocacy, that's like my winning trait. Like, oh, okay, things are handled. You might listen. I'm the type of person, if everyone else is like, if things are happening and they're like, I'm sorry, we dropped the ball on this, or this is handling this way and we can't do anything. The way I am, that applies to everybody else. It don't apply to me. And I will advocate and I will knock down doors until I get the yes that I'm looking for. That's the way my personality is set up. But understand, that's a survival strength. So that's a force energy. So I will operate in a type of force energy where I will keep knocking and knocking, knocking until I get the right person. But what does that mean? That means I'm always up, right? I'm always here. But I want peace. I want ease. I want softness. Again, being in my Esther year. So what that means? That means I have to be willing to release that. I have to be willing to let that go. So that means now I have to be willing to receive environments and receive spaces where it's purposefully curated, where that energy is not required of me. But I won't invite myself or let myself go into those spaces and truly enjoy it and experience it, right? Without all that confrontation. Even though it's advocacy, it feels like confrontation when it's not, but without all that confrontational energy, if I don't release that advocacy. So does that mean now I'll be in a place in life where I never have to advocate for myself again? No. Life isn't perfect. However, what I am saying is this: by not leading with this survival strength, it allows me to be intentional in creating more harmonious things for myself, more harmonious environments for myself, which means what? I can achieve my goal of living a softer life. A lot of, like I talk about it, a lot of soft life things are about, number one, isolation, right? And number two, aesthetics. For me, it's truly about the feeling, the experience in life for me. And I have to recognize things within myself that are counterproductive to the experience that I want. So if I have a mindset and I'm operating on a survival mindset where I'm always advocating for myself, and I'm like, and that's, what I'm always doing, then I'll never experience the ease that I'm looking for, because I'm always operating on a force energy and I'm always dealing with confrontations. But if I lay that thing to rest, right, it's like, it goes back to that whole thing. It's like, if you want something to work, you have to burn all the boats, because when you burn all the boats, you're going to make it work. So by laying that advocacy to rest as much as possible, okay, there's going to be scenarios where I have to advocate, but by choosing that, for that not to be the weapon that I always pick up, it forces me to think about, how can I approach this in a way that brings more ease and peace and things of that nature. Doesn't mean that, I dance around a situation. Sometimes it means that I'm going to advocate, but I'm not going to advocate on some, very nice little hush hush level. No, I'm not going to tiptoe around it. I'm going to tackle that thing head on, right? Measure 17 times, cut once. I'm going to attack that thing the way it needs to be done, so I never have to go back to it again. So sometimes it may mean that my advocacy is going to be a big punch, right? So that this thing could be laid completely to rest. But it also sometimes may mean that it's not even something I need to concern myself with, or I need to remove myself and go to another place where I can get the ease and flow that I'm looking for. Either way, by not relying on that survival strength, it opens the door for better ways to approach situations. So as you're on your Esther Year journey, I encourage you always to truly surrender the survival strengths that you are used to, because you don't understand how they are creating energies and experiences in your life that have really confined you to a personality and to experiences that are not rendering the results that you're actually happy about. Anyways, I love you guys. I'll talk to you soon. And also, don't forget that the 4-week Esther Year launch kit is on discount this month. That promotion has been extended. All you have to do is use the code PREPARE to take advantage. Again, that's the 4-week Esther Year launch kit for those of you guys that are ready to begin your Esther Year journey. That's going to include the Beauty for Ashes program, the Freedom Fast, the 21-day transformation guide, Kingdom Mindset Reset. Everything is included in that. All right. So I love you guys. I'll talk to you soon. Get down in the comments if you have a survival strength that is exhausting you. And even though you are a master of it, nonetheless, it exhausts you because you've had to use it to survive, right? If you have one of those strengths, share them in a comment. I'm curious to see what was one of the survival strengths that you're really good at, that you are like, I use this way too much and I'm tired. Okay. So I'll talk to you guys soon. Love you guys. Have a great one. Bye.